Everybody, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports for today's Rugby Championship Round 4 review. And what a round it was, and the competition, I don't think it's ever been as close as it is. This is definitely going to go down as one of the best rugby championships ever in terms of competitiveness, in terms of shocks, in terms of there just being absolutely no consistency whatsoever. We are 4 rounds in, and yet only one team has actually won back-to-back during the entire tournament, which is very weird to be 4 rounds in, and just 2 rounds remaining, and a very big 2 rounds. I mean, really, it's basically, if any team can win the next 2, chances are they'll probably they'll potentially very much win the tournament. And very interesting point systems coming into work and stuff like that. So lots to go through. And before we look at the logs and the fixtures and sort of look at the matches that were, please do smash a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. Now, the weekend started with a massive victory for New Zealand as they hammered Argentina 53 points to 3. 50-point thrashing by the home side. It was just an absolute tri-fest. Ethan de Groot, Caleb Clark, Rico Awani, Jordy Barrett, Artie Severe, and Brody Vitalik all getting onto the score sheet in a 50-point drubbing. 7 tries to none. And if you look at the stats, quite frustrating that Argentina only managed to score 3 points because they had the opportunities. They did have the opportunities. And you look at some of the stats, for example, possession was 53% for the All Blacks, but 47% for Argentina. So with 47% possession, to only find 3 points is pretty poor for the Argentines. They had more carries, they beat more defenders, but they conceded 13 turnovers. Their breakdown was an absolute disaster, which is something that was very good in the week before. And, I think if you look at the difference between the two performances, you look at defense, and Argentina, who was defensively flawless almost a week before when they beat New Zealand, were very poor this past weekend. And if you look at some of the stats, it sort of demonstrates exactly why they couldn't really repeat the defeat that they did a week ago. And it was always going to be a difficult task for Argentina to be able to try and repeat the type of performance that they put in last week, as I pull up some of the stats, because it was a pretty once in a lifetime performance from a defensive point of view. But whereas they missed, I think, only 5 or 6 tackles in the first test of like 211, they missed 26 tackles of 177. Offering an 85% tackle success rate, down from an 87% tackle success rate. Not that New Zealand was much better, 84%, but that was the thing. Argentina just weren't missing any tackles. They were turning over ball. They conceded 12 penalties, so we saw that Argentinian discipline, and 11 penalties in their own half, which is a very big difference between New Zealand, who conceded 11 penalties but just 5 in their own half. So sort of back to the drawing board really for Michael Cheika and his men. For Australia versus South Africa, also a little bit back to the drawing board for Australia, because it was a very dominant performance from South Africa and almost pretty woeful performance from Australia, who, had they not scored right towards the end, after that yellow card to Mapimpi, probably would have been 24-3, which is quite a substantial beating. 21 points, it's 3 tries. It was 4 tries to none by the end of it. And again, a little bit like Argentina, had possession, but the Springbok defense much better. They were winning turnovers, for example. They were competing at the breakdown, and I think when you start to dominate the breakdown, it goes a long way towards just being able to, first of all, kill momentum on the opposition, but also be able to build your own momentum. So they won 4 turnovers, for example, as Springboks did, compared to the only solitary turnover from Australia. And so after this weekend, the Rugby Championship table looks like this. Now, it doesn't really make much sense, the fact that Australia still sit above South Africa despite being tied on points. And if you look at points difference, for example, South Africa, first of all, having a better points difference, and head-to-head, for example, would be South Africa 1, Australia 1. So the reason that Australia is ahead of South Africa is because after points, the second sort of way that SANZAAR on the Rugby Championship point system works is that when teams are tied, so for example, Australia, South Africa, Argentina all tied 9 points, it is ranked by the team that has beaten the other teams that are tied the most times. So because Australia have beaten South Africa and Argentina, who are all tied at 9 points, they are ahead. So because South Africa and Argentina beat New Zealand, who are first, they're below Australia. It makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. I mean, it's pretty farcical itself, actually, from SANZAAR. I mean, how they can sit there and say, yeah, Australia are definitely the second best side. Doesn't matter that South Africa and Argentina have both beaten New Zealand, who are the best side. The fact that Australia managed to beat either of them once that's definitely they're better. I mean, it doesn't matter that South Africa and Argentina also both beat Australia. It makes no sense. I personally think it should be going to points difference or head to head. Head to head will probably have South Africa ahead because, if you look at the points between the two matches, they have scored more points, conceded more points in a 1-1 situation. And I think that would have been fairer. But go to points difference. Just stop making things complicated. Just go to points difference. And points difference would have South Africa in second, Australia in third, and Argentina in fourth, which is probably about right. But they've got a very weird point system. But I think the very interesting thing when you look at that table is you look at the form. And, New Zealand have gone loss, win, loss, win. Australia have gone win, loss, win, loss. South Africa win, 2 losses and another win. And Argentina the reverse of lost 2 wins and then a loss. So that's what I'm saying. Very few teams have been able to sort of put together an extended run. It's not like it's been teams no team has won 3 matches, for example. All teams have won 2 so far. So it's been a very close rugby championship. And if you look at the points for and points against, for example, South Africa and New Zealand having the best defense so far with 77 points against New Zealand at 78 points. New Zealand scored 116 points, with South Africa scored 90. Argentina scoring 102, the second most points in the competition, but have conceded the most. And that is very much an Argentina stat, which is quite you'd expect it. It's not a surprise stat. But let me know what you think of the Rugby Championship and of the 4th round down in the comments below. Please do smash a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steven. I'll chat to you soon.